I have told this story more times than I can count. Friends, strangers in pubs, my own grandchildren when they were small enough to sit still. And there is always one part where they stop me. One part they refuse to believe. The part where the boy in the bearskin hat did not move. I will get to that. But let me start where it actually started, because if I jump to the loud bit you will miss the thing that matters. And the thing that matters is not the noise. It never was. It was a Tuesday in June. I remember it was a Tuesday because Tuesdays were my quiet days, the days I did the short tour, the lazy one, the one for the people who only had half a morning in London and wanted a photo with a man in a red coat. I had been doing walking tour for 19 years by then. My knees knew every cobble. I could tell you which spot got the best light at 10 in the morning, which railing the children liked to hang off, which corner the pickpockets favored in August. I did not set out to do this for a living. Hardly anybody does. I had a proper job once in an office with a chair that hurt my back and a manager who said the word synergy like it meant something. My wife was the one who pushed me out the door. She said I lit up when I talked about the city, that I should be paid for it instead of boring her over dinner. She was right, the way she usually was. She used to come on the tour sometimes when she was off work, stand at the back, heckle me gently when I got a date wrong. She had been gone 4 years by that June. I still caught myself looking to the back of the group for her. You do not stop doing that. Nobody tells you that you do not stop. So that is who I was that morning. A widower in his 50s with sore knees and a folder of laminated photographs, telling strangers about kings and queens he never met. It is not a glamorous life, but it gets you outside and it puts you near the guards, and over 19 years a man near the guards sees more than he lets on. That morning the sky could not make up its mind. You know that London grey, the kind that is not quite rain but not quite anything else. The air had a wet smell to it, that smell of warm stone after a night of drizzle. There were pigeons everywhere, fat and bored, walking between people's feet like they owned the place. A coach had pulled up and let out a group of Spanish students, all of them loud and happy and far too young to care about the weather. I had 9 people with me that day. A retired couple from Ohio who kept calling everything "darling little." A young man on his own who I think was lonely, the way he stayed close, the way he laughed a beat too long at my jokes. A mother with 2 boys who would not stop asking how the guards went to the toilet, and a few others whose faces I have lost over the years. We walked down toward the park side, not the front of the palace where everyone crushes together for the changing of the guard. A quieter spot near the edge of the green where there was a sentry post tucked back from the road. A black and gold box, a stretch of railing and 1 guardsman on duty. Most tour guides do not bother with it. Most tourists want the big show, the band, the marching. But I liked this spot. It was honest. It was just one man and his job and nobody clapping for him. The guard that morning was young. I could tell even under the hat. You learn to read them after a while. The way they hold their shoulders, the way the chin sits. The older ones go still in a way that is almost lazy, like a cat that has done this 1,000 times. The young ones hold themselves too tight, every muscle working, terrified of getting it wrong. This one was a young one. His jaw was set so hard I half expected to hear his teeth. People think these men are statues. They are not. I have seen a guard with a wasp crawling on his lip stand so still that a tourist next to me started to cry. She found it so moving, and the whole time I could see the tendons in his neck shaking with the effort. I have seen one faint in the August heat, just fold up sideways like a deck chair, and his mates carry on marching past him as if he were a fallen branch, because that is the rule. You do not break the line for a man on the ground. Someone else will see to him. I have seen them keep their faces through insults, through flirting, through a drunk lad once who got right up in a guardsman's hat and screamed, and the guard simply blinked, and that blink was the loudest thing I ever heard. What I am trying to tell you is that the stillness is not emptiness. People look at the red coat and the tall hat and they think there is nobody home, just a costume, a postcard. There is somebody home. There is always somebody home. The whole job is somebody being home and refusing to show it. And once you understand that, you never look at one of them the same way again. Now, I said to my little group in my tour voice, the one that carries, this gentleman here is on what we call sentry duty. He is not allowed to speak to you. He is not allowed to react to you. You can wave, you can pose, you can pull whatever silly face you like, and he will look right through you as if you were made of glass. The two boys immediately ran up and started making faces. The mother apologized. I told her not to. Children testing a guard is the oldest game in the city. It is practically a tradition. The guard did not move. Of course he did not. The boys gave up after a minute, the way boys do, and went back to asking about toilets. I want you to hold onto that picture. The gray sky, the fat pigeons, the Spanish students laughing somewhere off to my left, a young man in a red tunic and a tall bearskin hat standing inside a painted box, doing the most boring job in the world. Nobody watching him properly except me, and even I was only half looking. That is how the morning was. Ordinary. So ordinary it hurts to remember now, because I know what came next and they did not. There was a flower seller near the corner. Rena. I knew her a little, the way you know people whose patch crosses yours. She sold cut flowers out of metal buckets, carnations mostly, a few roses, things that traveled well. She had a thermos she drank from between customers and a way of clicking her tongue at the pigeons. That morning she had a radio on low, some talk station, and I remember thinking the voices sounded tense, but I did not listen properly. There was an old man too. Flat cap, a coat too heavy for June, the kind of coat a man keeps because his wife bought it and his wife is gone. He was sitting on a bench with a little girl beside him. His granddaughter, I assumed, though I never found out for certain. She had a paper bag of something, crisps maybe, and she was feeding more to the pigeons than to herself. He watched her the way old men watch children they love, with this soft, far-off look, like he was seeing something the rest of us could not. I would not have noticed any of them. Not Rena, not the old man, not the girl. They were just background, the wallpaper of a London morning. But I have gone over that morning so many times in my head that the wallpaper has become the whole room. Every one of them matters now. Every one of them was about to become part of it. The first odd thing was the car. It came down the road slow, too slow. There is a speed cars go in London when the driver does not care, and a speed they go when the driver is lost, and a speed they go when something is wrong. This was the wrong speed. Crawling. A dark estate car, nothing special, a bit dirty down the sides. It pulled in near a loading bay, the kind of spot you are not really meant to stop in, but everyone does for a minute. A man got out. I did not see his face properly. I have tried, believe me. The police asked me 100 times and I gave them 100 useless answers. Average height, dark jacket, a cap I think, though I might be inventing that. He moved quickly once he was out. That is the only thing I am sure of. He did not lock the car. He did not look back at it. He just walked fast, head down, around the corner and gone. People leave cars badly all the time. People walk fast all the time. There was nothing in it, not really, nothing you could point at. But something in my stomach went cold. I cannot explain it better than that. It was the not looking back. People look back at their cars. It is automatic, the little glance, did I lock it, did I leave the lights on? He did not give it even that. I told myself I was being daft. 19 years of telling tourists ghost stories, and now I was scaring myself with a parked car. There is a thing that happens in your body before your mind catches up. I have heard soldiers talk about it since, and nurses, people who deal with the worst days. The body knows first. The mouth goes dry. The hearing sharpens so that suddenly I could pick out every separate sound. The click of Rena's tongue at the pigeons, the squeal of a child somewhere behind me, the tick of the dirty estate car's engine cooling. The skin on my arms went tight. I did not have a single clear thought. I just had this animal feeling that the ground had tilted half a degree, and that nobody else had noticed, and that I should say something, and that I would look like a fool if I did. So I said nothing. That is the truth, and I will not dress it up. I felt the danger and I said nothing because I was more afraid of embarrassment than I was of death. That is most of us, most of the time. That is the small, ugly secret of being a person. We will walk straight toward a cliff rather than make a scene. And over here, I said, turning my group away from the road, pointing at nothing in particular. You can see the kind of railings that have stood here since. I do not remember the rest of the sentence. I have tried, it is just gone. Because that was when the guard moved. Not much, hardly anything. If you had blinked you would have missed it. His head turned. Just a fraction, just enough, toward the road, toward the car. A guard on sentry duty does not do that. They are trained out of it. You can set off a flash in their face, you can shout, you can drop to your knees and beg, and they will not give you their eyes. But this one gave the car his eyes for half a second. And then he gave it something else. He brought his rifle up off the rest, off his shoulder into both hands. A small movement, a practiced movement, the kind of movement that is not for show. I felt the morning change. I cannot describe it any other way. It was like the air pressure dropped. The young man near me, the lonely one, felt it too. He stopped laughing. He looked at me and said very quietly, "Why's he doing that?" I did not have an answer. Rena had turned her radio up. I could hear it now, properly, the urgency in the announcer's voice, and a word that cut through everything else. A word you do not want to hear on a quiet morning in the middle of a city. The word was device. I did not catch the whole report. Just fragments, the way you catch fragments through a crowd. Something about a warning. Something about a part of the city a mile or two east where they had cleared the streets. Something about police asking the public to report anything unattended. And then a phrase that I have never forgotten, said in that flat, careful, broadcast way, the way they say things they do not want to cause a stampede over. They said the threat level had been raised. They said it as if they were reading the shipping forecast. And all the while I was staring at a dirty estate car with its driver long gone around the corner, and Rena was staring at it too, and her thermos was tipped in her hand, the tea running out over her wrist, and she did not even feel it. She was looking at the car. Her hand had gone to her mouth. I want to tell you that I acted fast, that I gathered my people and got them clear, and I was a hero. I did not. For a few seconds I just stood there like the tourist I secretly am, staring at a dirty estate car as if staring at it would tell me anything. The retired couple from Ohio were still smiling, still photographing the guard, completely unaware. The two boys had found the pigeons. The old man on the bench was unwrapping something for the little girl. It was the guard who broke the spell. He stepped out of his box. You have to understand what that means. To anyone who knows even a little about these men, they do not leave the box. The box is the post. The post is everything. Their whole world for 2 hours is that patch of stone and that painted black wood. There are rules older than any of us about what they may and may not do, and leaving the post without relief, without order, is not one of the things they do. I had watched 1,000 of them. I had never once seen a guard simply walk out. Later, much later, a man who had served explained it to me over a pint. He said the post is not really about the standing. He said the post is a promise. When that man takes his place in the box, he is telling the city and the palace behind him and everyone who walks past that this ground is held. That whatever comes, someone is here and that someone will not leave. It is not about the rifle, he said. It is barely even about the danger. It is about the promise. And a promise is only worth anything when keeping it costs you something. That morning, it was about to cost everything. He walked out. He did not run. That is what I keep coming back to. A normal man, seeing what he saw, suspecting what he suspected, would have run. Run away, run for help, run for cover, run somewhere. He did not run. He walked fast and straight, his rifle in his hands, his back as stiff as the railings behind him, toward the thing the rest of us were too slow and too stupid to be afraid of yet. And as he walked, he started to call out, loud, a parade ground voice, a voice built to carry over 100 marching feet, and it carried over us like a wave. Move back from the vehicle. Move back from the vehicle now. Everyone away from the road. Move. It is a strange thing, a voice like that. It does not ask. It does not panic. It simply expects to be obeyed, and so people obey. The Spanish students scattered. The retired couple finally stopped smiling. The mother grabbed her two boys by the collars. My lonely young man took 3 steps backward and then looked at me as if to check that backward was allowed. But the old man on the bench did not move. Maybe he was deaf. Old men often are, more than they admit. Maybe the heavy coat had wrapped him up too snug in his own little world. Him and the girl and the pigeons, and the parade ground voice was just more London noise to him, more shouting, the city always shouting about something. Or maybe he heard every word and his body simply would not answer. I have come to think it was that. I have watched my own body refuse me on the worst day of my life, standing in a hospital corridor while a doctor's mouth moved. You hear it, you understand it, and you cannot make your legs do the thing. Whatever it was, he sat there. And the little girl, seeing her grandfather still, stayed still too, because that is what children do. They take their cue from the grown-up beside them. She even smiled. She had no idea. She held out another crisp to a pigeon and she smiled. I saw the guard see them. I saw the calculation happen in the space of a single stride. The old man, slow, confused, his bad hip, his heavy coat. The little girl beside him with her paper bag of crisps. The car 10 feet away, maybe 12, and the guard further off with the whole open green behind him, with every reason and every right to keep going the other way. And then the morning, which had already gone so quiet, went quieter still. The kind of quiet that has a sound to it, the kind of quiet that comes right before. I did not know it then, but I was looking at a young man making the most important decision of his life, and he made it in less time than it takes me to say so. I have told this story more times than I can count, and this is where they always stop me. This is the part they will not believe. Because the next thing that boy did, the thing he did before anything else, before he thought of himself, before he thought of the rifle in his hands or the rules that had governed every minute of his service. The next thing he did was run toward the old man. But I am getting ahead of myself. Let me catch my breath, because what happened in the next 90 seconds is the reason I am still telling this at all, and I want to get it right. For him, he would want me to get it right. I have thought about those 90 seconds more than I have thought about almost anything in my life, more than my wedding day, more than the day they put my wife in the ground, God forgive me. 90 seconds. You can hold your breath for 90 seconds if you practice. You can boil an egg and not much more. It is nothing. It is no time at all. And a whole life can turn on it the way a whole door turns on one small hinge. I did not have a watch on the moment, obviously. Nobody is checking their watch. But the police worked it out afterward, from the camera on the building across the road, from the timing of the calls that came in. From the first turn of that young man's head to the moment it was over was a little under 90 seconds. So let me tell you about the 90 seconds, and then you can decide for yourself whether you believe the part where he did not move, because that part is true. I was there. I saw it with my own 2 eyes, and I have never once been able to make it sound true, no matter how many times I say it. I will try again now. The first thing he did was reach the bench. He covered the ground faster than I would have thought a man could in that uniform. People think the red tunic and the heavy hat must slow them down, and maybe they do, but you would not have known it. He went past me close enough that I felt the air move. Close enough that I saw his face for the first time properly, the face under the strap, and it has stayed with me ever since. He was younger than I thought. 20, maybe 21. He had a small cut on his chin from shaving that morning, a tiny thing, a nick, the most ordinary thing in the world. I do not know why that is the detail my brain decided to keep. A boy who had cut himself shaving a few hours before, and now he was running toward a bomb. He did not waste a single word on the old man. There was no time for please or sir or would you mind. He simply got behind the bench, took it by the back rail with both hands, the rifle slung across him now, and he heaved. The whole bench. with the old man still on it and the little girl half off it. He dragged the thing backward across the paving, the metal legs screaming on the stone, and the old man gave a shout of surprise, and the girl dropped her bag of crisps, and they scattered everywhere, and the pigeons went up all at once in a gray storm. He got them maybe 10 feet, 12. It does not sound like much, 10 feet, but I have learned since that 10 feet is the difference between a story you tell and a story somebody tells about you. 10 feet is a lifetime. 10 feet is the whole of everything. And then he stopped dragging and he did the next thing, the thing that I will see behind my eyes until the day I die. He put himself between them and the car. He turned his back on the danger and he spread himself over the old man and the child, this young man in his bright red coat, this boy with a shaving cut, and he made of his own body a wall. He pressed them down. I heard him say one word, just one. He said, "Down." Quiet, almost gentle, nothing like the parade ground voice from before. As if he were tucking a child into bed. Then the morning ended. I do not have good words for the sound. I have tried for years and I do not have them. People who write books reach for things. They say it was like thunder, like a door slamming in the center of your skull, like the sky tearing. None of it is right. It was not really a sound at all, not the way we mean sound. It was a thing that happened to my whole body at once. It came up through my feet, and it pushed the air out of my chest, and it took the hearing clean out of my ears and replaced it with a high white ringing. And for a moment, for a strange long moment, the world went silent and slow and almost beautiful. I was on the ground. I do not remember getting there. I remember the underside of things, the way you only see the underside of the world when you are down on it, the chewing gum stains on the paving, a single white trainer with no foot in it, a child's hairband. Dust coming down like the worst snow you ever saw, settling on my arms, on the backs of my hands, gray and warm. And that ringing, that endless ringing, and underneath it, far away as if from the bottom of a well, the first scream starting up. Time did a strange thing in there. I have spoken to others since, the few of us who were close and lived, and we all say the same. The second stretched. A second became a long, slow room you could walk around in. I had time, in the time it takes a body to fall, to think a dozen unconnected things. I thought of my wife. I thought, oddly, of a cup of tea I had left half drunk on my kitchen table that morning, and how it would be cold now, and how it seemed unbearably sad that I had not finished it. I thought, this is it then, this is the day, you never know which one it will be, and now I know. None of it was frightening. The mind is a strange animal. Handed the end of everything, it reaches for a cold cup of tea. I want to be careful here. I have told this part wrong before, made it bigger than it was because the people listening want it bigger, they want the film version. The truth is smaller and worse. The truth is that for a while I just lay there. I did not heroically leap up. I lay on the ground with my cheek against the cold stone, and I thought very calmly, almost pleasantly, that I might be dead. It did not frighten me. That is the thing nobody tells you. In the middle of it, it does not frighten you. The fear comes later and never really leaves. But in the middle there is only this great flat calm, and a kind of mild curiosity, and the warm gray snow coming down. It was the sound of my own name that brought me back. My lonely young man, the one who laughed too long at my jokes, was shaking my shoulder and saying something, and I could not hear it, but I could read it on his mouth. He was saying, "Are you all right? Are you all right? Are you all right?" over and over, and there was blood on his forehead from a cut above his eyebrow. A small cut, head cuts always look worse than they are, and he was crying without seeming to know he was crying. Around us, the world was putting itself back together wrong. I have thought about it since as a kind of terrible undoing, as if someone had taken an ordinary morning and shaken it like a snow globe, and set it down again with everything in the wrong place. The coach that had brought the Spanish students had all its windows gone, just frames now, and the students were spilling out of a cafe doorway where they had sheltered, holding each other, counting each other, a teacher with her arms wide trying to gather them like a hen. The mother with the two boys was on her knees with both of them crushed against her, and they were screaming, but it was the good kind of screaming, the kind that means a child has air in its lungs and a mother's arms around it. The retired couple from Ohio I found later sitting on a step 100 yards off, holding hands, both of them perfectly silent, the man's camera still hanging round his neck with its lens smashed white. And the flowers. I will tell you about the flowers because it is the thing that breaks me even now. Rena's buckets had gone over in the blast, all of them, and the whole stretch of ruined pavement was scattered with carnations and roses, pink and red and white, lying in the glass and the dust and the gray snow. A street full of broken windows and broken things, and flowers everywhere, as if someone had already come to lay them. Rena herself was alive, sitting up against the wall, blinking, a cut on her arm, staring at her spilled flowers as if she could not understand how they had got there. She was all right. She is still all right. She moved her stall after that to the other side of the river, and I do not blame her. I sat up. The world swung. I was sick right there, I am not ashamed to say it now. And then the hearing started to come back in pieces like a radio finding its station, and the first thing it found was the screaming, and the second thing it found was the car alarms, dozens of them. The whole street of parked cars set off at once, all of them wailing, and the third thing, the thing I will never forget, was somebody nearby saying over and over, the guard, where is the guard?" I turned to look at the bench. It was on its side. The old man was underneath it and the little girl was beside him, and they were both moving, thank God, both of them moving. The girl was crying and the old man had his arm thrown over her, and there was dust all over them, gray and thick in their hair, in the creases of the old man's heavy coat. But they were alive. They were alive because of the 10 feet. They were alive because of the wall of red. I learned their names later, the way you learn the names of people whose lives have got tangled up with yours through no plan of anyone's. The old man was called Walter. He was 81. The girl was his great-granddaughter, not his granddaughter as I had thought, and her name was Posy. She was 6, and they came to that bench most Tuesdays to feed the pigeons because Walter's wife had loved the pigeons and it was a way of keeping her near. Tuesdays, the same as me. We had probably passed each other 100 times and never once spoken. That is London for you. A million private lives brushing past one another. And then one morning a stranger in a red coat throws himself over 2 of them and ties 3 families together forever. But that morning I knew none of it. That morning they were just 2 shapes in the dust, alive, and the wall of red was lying very still. He was a few feet from them where the blast had thrown him, on his front, his arm out at an angle that arms are not meant to make. The bearskin hat was gone, rolled off somewhere, and without it he looked smaller and younger, just a young man with short dark hair lying face down on the paving of a city he had sworn to keep. There was a great deal of dust on his red coat, turning it almost gray, so that the color only showed through in patches. In the creases, where it stayed defiant and bright. I crawled to him. I do not remember deciding to. I just found myself doing it, on my hands and knees through the broken glass, and I have small white scars on my palms to this day from that crawl, and I am glad of them. They are the only thing I have that is proof. I want to be honest about the crawl because I have heard other people describe doing brave things in those moments and I did not feel brave. I felt nothing. The calm was still on me, the great flat calm, and it carried me across that glass the way a current carries a leaf. I did not think, I must help this man. I did not think anything at all. I think the truth is that the body, when it has decided not to die, looks around for something to do, some small order it can impose on a world that has just shown it has no order in it, and the nearest thing to do was to crawl to the boy in the red coat. So I crawled. People have called it brave since. It was not brave. It was just the only thing left that made any sense. I got to him and I did not know what to do. I am a tour guide. I know dates and stories. I do not know how to help a man who has had a bomb go off beside him. I put my hand on his back between his shoulder blades, the way you might wake a friend who had fallen asleep on a train, and I said stupidly, I said, son, can you hear me?" And he moved. He moved, and the relief of it took my legs from under me even though I was already kneeling. He turned his head slow against the stone, and he opened his eyes, and they were the most ordinary eyes, brown, bloodshot, full of dust, and they did not look at me. They looked past me. They went searching, jerking side to side, and his mouth was working, and I bent down close to hear him over the alarms and the ringing and the screaming, and what he said was not what I expected. It was not, "Help me." It was not, "What happened?" It was not even my arm. He said, "Are they all right?" I have turned that over so many times. The first words out of a young man who had a bomb go off 3 feet from his back, who had every bone and every nerve telling him to think of himself, to ask for his mother, to ask whether he would live. And what he wanted to know was whether the strangers were all right. An old man he had never met, a child whose name he did not know. I think about all the things people say at the worst moment, all the small, selfish human things we say, and which God knows I would say, and then I think about those 3 words, and I do not understand them, and I have stopped trying to understand them. Some people are simply built to a different plan. I have only met 1 or 2 in my whole life. He was one. I told him yes. I told him the old man and the girl were alive, they were right there, look, they were sitting up. And something went out of his face, some terrible tightness, and for just a second he closed his eyes, and I genuinely thought, that he had let himself go, that hearing they were safe was the last thing he had been holding on for. I started shouting for help, properly shouting, and somewhere a long way off I could hear sirens already coming, the city's own answer, those 2 notes that mean we are coming, hold on. But he was not letting go. He was, of all the things in the world, trying to get up. I told him not to. I put both hands on his shoulders and I told him to lie still, that help was coming, that he had done enough, that he had done more than enough, that he was a brave lad and he must lie still. I am not a young man and I am not a strong one, but I put everything I had into holding him down, and it was not enough. He got an elbow under himself, the good arm, and the pain of it crossed his face like a cloud crossing the sun, there and gone, swallowed, because even now, even broken on the ground, the training would not let him show it for longer than a breath. "My post," he said. I thought I had misheard. I said, "What?" "My post," he said again, and his voice was stronger now, ridiculous and stronger, the voice of a young man explaining something obvious to someone slow. "I have to get back to my post." I told him no. I told him there was no post, that the box was gone, that none of it mattered now, that the only thing in the world that mattered was that he lay down. I told him the police were coming, the army was coming, that men were coming who would relieve him, that he was relieved. Did he understand? He was relieved of his duty. I would have said anything. I would have promised him the moon. He shook his head, a small motion side to side against the stone, and it seemed to cost him more than the standing would. "You can't just leave," he said. He was not really talking to me anymore. He was talking to himself, or to someone who was not there, a sergeant maybe, an old voice in his head that had drilled this into him until it was deeper than fear, deeper than pain, maybe deeper than sense. "You can't just leave a post. There's people watching. You have to show them." And he stopped and swallowed, and I waited, and when he finished it came out very quietly. "You have to show them somebody's still here." I did not know what to say to that. I'm not sure there is anything to say to that. I have repeated it in pubs and at dinner tables and to my own grandchildren, and every single time the room goes still, because everyone knows, somewhere underneath, that he was saying something true. That a city is held together not by its walls but by the simple, stubborn fact of people who will not leave. The nurse who stays past her shift. The teacher who turns back for the last child. The young man who, with a bomb behind him and his arm in pieces, can think of nothing more important than letting the frightened people see that somebody is still standing where he said he would stand. He looked at me then. For the first time he really looked at me, and there was something in his face I have never been able to forget and never been able to fully describe. It was not fear and it was not pride. It was a kind of patience, as if I were a child who did not understand the most basic thing, and he was too tired and too gentle to be angry about it. "You don't understand," he said. "Nobody relieved me." And he got up. I want you to picture it because I will never see anything like it again. The street was a ruin. There was smoke going straight up into that gray sky, joining it, becoming it. There were people on the ground and people running and a woman somewhere screaming a name, the same name, again and again. There was glass everywhere. A whole street of windows turned to glass like ice on the pavement, catching what little light there was. And up out of all of it, swaying, his arm hanging wrong, his coat gray with dust, his face cut and bleeding, a young man stood up. He found his feet. He nearly went down again and he caught himself. And then he turned slowly and he looked back the way he had come, toward where the box had been, toward his post, and he started to walk. I got up too. I had to. You could not watch that and stay on your knees. My legs were water and the street was glass and smoke and ruin, and I followed him, a few steps behind, with my hands half out as if I could catch a falling man twice my strength, and I have never in my life felt so useless and so unable to look away. He walked like a man underwater, each step decided on separately. His arm hung wrong at his side and he held it close with the other hand, and the dust drifted off his coat as he moved so that he left a faint gray trail in the air behind him. People had begun to notice. The screaming was changing, turning, the way a crowd's sound turns when it finds something to fix on. Faces, white and stunned, came up out of the smoke and the doorways, and they watched the boy in the red coat walk back toward the painted box that was not even there anymore. And a silence began to spread out from him across that broken street, the strangest silence, made of held breath. I did not know yet how it would end. None of us did. I did not know whether he would reach the post, or what reaching it would mean, or whether he would be alive in an hour. I only knew that I was watching something I would spend the rest of my life trying to describe and never quite manage. So let me stop here a moment and gather myself, the way the street gathered itself around him, because what he did when he reached that post is the part I came to tell you. And it is the part I have never been able to say without my voice going. There was no box left to stand in. That is the thing I need you to understand before I tell you the rest. The blast had taken the sentry box, not all of it, but enough. It was on its side, splintered, the black paint scorched gray, one wall of it gone entirely. The patch of stone where a guard had stood that morning, where guards had stood for longer than anyone alive could remember, was buried under glass and dust and the wreck of the box itself. There was nothing there to go back to. There was nothing there at all. He went back anyway. I followed him the whole way, a few steps behind, useless, my hands half out. And when he reached the place, he stopped. He stood among the wreckage of the box, in the dust, in the broken glass, with the smoke still going up behind him and the sirens close now, very close, and he did the only thing he knew how to do. He came to attention. I watched him do it. I watched a young man with a broken arm and a cut face and a bomb's worth of ruin all around him bring his heels together, as near as he could, and straighten his back and lift his chin, and fix his eyes on the middle distance the way they are trained to, the 1,000-yard stare that looks at nothing and everything. He could not hold the rifle properly. The arm would not allow it. So he held it across his body with the one good hand, the best he could manage, and he stood. He stood his post. There was no box. There was no order. There was no one to see him who would understand what they were seeing. There was just a broken street and a broken boy, and he stood there as if the king himself were watching from a window, as if the whole weight of every soldier who had ever held that ground were resting on his shoulders. And maybe, in a way I am not clever enough to explain, it was. I have thought a great deal about why he did it. Not the dragging of the bench, not the shielding, those I think I understand. Those are the things a good heart does without asking. But this, the standing, there was no one to impress. The danger was not even over. For all any of us knew, there could have been a second device. That is the way of these things, and a sensible man would have been 100 yards away. He gained nothing by it. He saved no one by it. And yet I have come to think it was the truest thing he did all morning, truer even than the saving. Because the saving was instinct and the standing was a choice. The standing was him saying, to the smoke and the screaming and the ruined street and to himself most of all, that the thing had not won, that they could take the box and the windows and the ordinary morning, they could take all of it, and there would still be a man standing where a man was meant to stand. It was the smallest possible act of defiance and somehow the largest. One boy, refusing to be moved off a patch of broken stone. People say I have made this part up. They say it cannot be true, that no one would do that, that it is the kind of thing that only happens in films, and I understand why they say it. I would say it too if I had not been standing 8 feet away with glass in my knees and tears cutting tracks through the dust on my face. But I was there. He stood his post. I will swear it on anything you put in front of me. He stood his post. I do not know how long he stayed standing. It felt like a long time, and it was probably less than a minute. The body can only borrow so much. I saw it start to leave him, the strength, saw his knees begin their slow betrayal, and I started forward to catch him, and that is when the soldiers came. They came at a run, 3 of them in the working dress you do not see on the postcards, and they were shouting, and they had medics behind them, and they were the most welcome thing I have ever seen in my life. The first one reached him and grabbed him, and the boy flinched, actually flinched, and tried to straighten up again, tried to stand to attention for the man who had come, and I heard the soldier say something I will carry with me forever. He did not say lie down, he did not say you fool. He looked at that swaying, ruined boy, and he understood at once what no one else there had understood, and he drew himself up and he said, clear and firm and kind, I've got it from here. You're relieved. You're relieved. And only then, only when another soldier told him that the post was held, that someone else was standing where he stood, that he could let go because the promise had been passed on to other hands. Only then did the boy let himself fall. He did not faint, not exactly. It was gentler than that, and somehow worse. It was a man laying down a weight he had carried past the point any man should carry it. He simply folded slowly into the soldier's arms, and his eyes closed, and his face, for the first time since he stepped out of that box, went soft, went young, went like the face of someone falling asleep at the end of the longest day of their life. They had him on a stretcher in under a minute. I tried to go with him, and of course they would not let me. I was nobody. I was just a man who had been there. The last I saw of him that day was a flash of red disappearing into the back of an ambulance, and the doors closing, and the 2 notes of the siren rising as it pulled away through a street that would never look the same to me again. I did not learn his name for 9 days. I looked for it everywhere. The news did not have it at first, the way the news never does, all helicopters and reporters standing too far back saying the same 3 sentences in different orders. They called him a soldier. They called him a guardsman. They said he was in hospital and his condition was serious but stable, and I read those words over and over in the way you do, looking for more inside them, and there was no more inside them. Serious but stable. It is a small gray phrase to hold a whole life in. Those 9 days were their own strange country. I did not sleep well. I would lie awake and run the morning again, frame by frame, and every time it ended the same way, with the red disappearing into the back of the ambulance and the doors closing, and I could not get past the doors closing. I went to my doctor in the end, and she gave it a name, what was happening to me, and told me it was ordinary, that everyone who had been close was feeling some version of it, that the mind has to chew a thing like that for a long time before it can swallow it. I asked her how long. She said as long as it takes. Doctors and soldiers, I have noticed, give the same honest, useless answers. And all that while I did not even know his name. It seemed wrong to me, deeply wrong, that I should have watched a man do the bravest thing I would ever see and not be able to say his name out loud. A name is the least we owe the people who save us, so I waited for it the way you wait for news of family. His name was Thomas Easton. Tom. He was 20 years old, from a town in the north I had never been to, the eldest of 3, the son of a man who drove a delivery lorry and a woman who worked in a school kitchen. He had joined up at 18. He had a girlfriend back home called Bait and a dog called Scout, and he had never been on the news for anything in his life. And now his face was on the front of every paper in the country, the official photograph, the one in dress uniform where they all looked the same, scrubbed and serious and impossibly young. The papers called him a hero and he hated it. I know he hated it because I asked him much later. I will come to that. He lived. I want to say that plainly and early because I have made people wait through this story before and watch their faces, and it is cruel to make you wait. He lived. The arm took 3 operations and a long time, and it never came all the way back, and there were other injuries, the kind they do not put in the papers, the kind that are inside, the kind that take longer than bones. But he lived. Walter lived too, old Walter with his heavy coat, 81 and shaken to his soul but alive. And little Posy did not have a mark on her. Not one. 6 years old in the middle of all that, and she walked away without a scratch because a stranger turned his back on a bomb and made a wall of himself. 11 people were hurt that morning, some of them badly. I will not pretend it was a day with no cost because that would be a lie and he would not want a lie told for him. People were hurt. The city carried it for a long time, the way a city does quietly, in the way people held their bags a little tighter on the bus for months afterward. But nobody died. On a morning when, by every measure, people should have died, nobody did. And the men who know about these things, the ones who came afterward and measured the blast and worked out the angles and the distances, they said a thing that I have held on to. They said that the people closest to that car should not have survived. They said the only reason any of them did was that someone had moved them and shielded them. In the few seconds nobody should have had the presence of mind to use. He used them. A 20-year-old with a shaving cut used the few seconds nobody should have had, and because he did. An old man got to feed the pigeons again, and a little girl got to grow up. I met him once, properly I mean, when he was well enough. It took me the better part of a year to work up to writing the letter, and another few months before he wrote back, and then there was a long quiet while, and then one afternoon I found myself sitting across a small table from him in a cafe near his barracks, both of us holding mugs of tea we were too nervous to drink. He was not what I expected. I had built him up in my head into something marble, something out of the stories I tell for a living. He was just a lad. He laughed easily. He was embarrassed by the whole thing, deeply, genuinely embarrassed, and he kept turning it back to other people, to the medics, to his mates, to the soldier who relieved him, who he said was the real one to talk to. When I told him what it had been like to watch him come to attention in the ruins of that box, he went quiet and looked into his tea, and for a moment I thought I had said the wrong thing. We talked for a long time, longer than either of us had planned, the way you do when you have shared something that no one else in the room could understand. He asked after Walter and Posy, by name. He knew their names, of course he did. They had become a part of his life as surely as he had become a part of theirs. He told me Walter had written to him in hospital, a long letter in a shaky old hand, and that he had read it more times than he could count and could not get through it dry-eyed even now. He told me almost shyly that Posy had sent a drawing. A child's drawing, he said, of a man in a red coat standing in front of a sun, with the word thank you spelled out in big wobbly letters underneath, the Y the wrong way round. He said he had it framed. He said it was the only thing from that whole business he would keep. The medals could go in a drawer, but the drawing he would keep on the wall until he died. I asked him about the medals because the country had given him some by then, and there had been a ceremony, his family in their best clothes, his mother crying, all of it on the news. He shrugged. He said it had been a nice day for his mum. That was the most he would give it, a nice day for his mum. Then he said something I have thought about every day since. He said he did not really remember deciding to do any of it. He said people kept asking him how he found the courage, and he never knew what to tell them because it had not felt like courage. It had not felt like a choice at all. He said when you stand a post enough times, something happens to you that he could not put into words. The post stops being a place you are standing and becomes a thing you are. He said, and I am giving you his exact words because they are better than any I could find, he said. I wasn't being brave. I just couldn't think of a single good reason to leave. I have turned that over more times than I can count. I couldn't think of a single good reason to leave. As if leaving were the thing that needed explaining. As if standing your ground while the world comes apart were simply the natural state of a decent person, and running were the strange exception that wanted a reason. Most of us are the other way round. Most of us need a reason to stay. He needed a reason to go and could not find one, and so he stayed, and so an old man and a little girl are alive. I have wondered since how a person gets to be like that, whether you are born with it or whether the army puts it in you, or whether it was there all along in a lorry driver's eldest boy from a northern town, and the red coat just gave it somewhere to stand. I do not know. I have decided I do not need to know. There are a few people in this world who, when the ground tilts and everyone else looks for the exit, simply plant their feet, and they do not do it for glory and they cannot really tell you why, and the rest of us live in the shelter of them without ever learning their names. I learned one name. I count myself lucky for it. I do not see him much now. We send cards. I know he left the army a few years after, the arm and the inside things finally winning out, and that he went home north and married his bait and works now doing something ordinary that I will not name because it is his and not mine to give away. He has children of his own, I believe. I hope one day they are old enough to be told properly what their father did on a gray Tuesday in June before they were born. I hope someone gets it right for them. I have tried to write it down so that someone can. The street is mended now, of course. Cities mend. The windows are all back. There are new paving stones where the old ones were torn up, a slightly different gray, and if you knew to look you could find the line where the new meets the old, but almost nobody knows to look. The flowers are gone from where they fell. Rena sells hers across the river now. The cafe where the Spanish students sheltered has changed hands twice. Time does that. It rolls over the worst day of your life and smooths it down until strangers walk across it without ever knowing. And the box is back. They built it again, the sentry box, black and gold in the same spot on the new gray stones. And there is a guard there most days, a young one or an older one, standing the post the way they always have, looking through the tourists as if the tourists were made of glass, perfectly still, somebody home behind the eyes and refusing to show it. The tourists pose. The children pull faces. The pigeons walk between everyone's feet as if nothing ever happened on that ground and nothing ever could. Maybe that is right. Maybe that is even the point. A guard stands so that the rest of the world can go on being careless and happy and unafraid in front of him, never knowing what it would cost him to keep them that way. I go past it more often than I need to. My tour do not really require it, but I find ways. And every single time I stop just for a moment on the far side of the road, and I look at whatever young man or woman is standing there in the box that morning, not knowing their name, not knowing their story, not knowing what it cost the boy who stood there before them. And I think the same thing every time. I think somebody's still here. That is what he was trying to show the frightened people, with a bomb behind him and his arm in pieces. Not bravery. Not the king, not the country, not any of the big words the papers reached for. Just that. Just the oldest and simplest and most human promise there is, the one a city is really built on, the one we are all of us standing somewhere trying to keep, whether we know it or not. Somebody's still here. He stood his post, and I have told you the truth, every word, and you may believe the part you find too hard to believe or not. It makes no difference to me now. He stood his post. I was there. And I will go on saying it in pubs and at dinner tables and to my grandchildren for as long as I have a voice to say it, because some things should not be allowed to be smoothed down by time, and that boy in the red coat is one of them. So the next time you pass a man standing still in a painted box, and you are tempted to wave, or to pull a face, or to wonder if there is anyone really home behind those eyes. Stop. There is someone home. There is always someone home.